This is part 2 of the PLM600-E installation. Part 2 will consist of removing the shipping hardware, which is the orange brackets here. The first step to taking the shipping hardware off is you want to have air going to the machine. So remove this plug, 6mm, from the regulator and insert this fitting, which converts it to the tubing. The other side of the tubing is going into a quick disconnect, and that would go into the wall. This setup may vary and you may need to supply this yourself.
Might be that. I might not have tight enough.
You want 3 bar at the regulator, and it's adjusted using this knob right here. Now that we have air to the machine, 3 bar, you can remove the shipping hardware. There's constant air moving through the bearings on this head. On this head, it's controlled by this switch. That's the table. And on this tailstock, it's controlled by this button here. So if you need to move this, make sure you press the air first. Headstock has constant airflow. You can loosen these, being careful not to hit the spindle.
I just put these back hand tight, man.
Remove this top panel so that we have access to the shipping hardware bolts. That panel's held on by this nut and that nut there. Just back them off a little bit. 2 large Allens hold the orange brackets to the granite, 8mm. You want to save this shipping hardware. We'll put it all in one box and keep it aside in case the machine ever needs to be relocated. It's definitely necessary to have the shipping hardware installed. Back top plate can be reinstalled. Side panel will need to be removed so that you can get to the large Allens on this bracket. For the table, these 2 screws hold the tabletop up. These put pressure downward. And then you have the large 8mm Allens in the back, 4 of them. Coming in from the side, you have an Allen that goes through the plastic bushing down in there that goes between the orange hardware and the table. And while you remove this, you want to have someone hold to keep pressure up so that the orange plate doesn't fall down. Once all the bolts are removed, the shipping mechanism for the table just lifts straight up and off. This protective sticker can be removed from the tabletop. As well as these T-nuts removed. These protective caps go over the anvils. Those can be removed and set aside. Now you have the ability to actuate the air, and you can move the tailstock, as well as the headstock is on air, but it's connected to the spindle down here to where it's stiff. So it can't be moved by hand unless you push really hard. But there's air to it all the time, so it's constantly floating. There's one last piece of shipping hardware. To access this, first unscrew the knob by turning counterclockwise. The sheet metal cover will then be removed by lifting up and pulling out at the same time. You may have to pry from the bottom with the screwdriver. So up and out at the same time. So similar design as the side panels, you have these slots here, and these buttons go into those slots. You want to make sure those are tight. Those tend to loosen up during shipping. So inside here, you have this little L bracket with 4 Allens holding it, and that's the last piece of shipping hardware. L brackets removed and set aside. And then the covers can be reinstalled. Top just slides down on. Front, push in and down at the same time. Make sure the buttons are in the channels. And screw the knob clockwise to put it back on. This concludes the removal of the shipping hardware. Next we'll go into wiring the control cabinet into the machine.